The fluorescent lights hummed above Boris's head, casting a sickly yellow glow across the security monitors. Another uneventful night at the Grand Central Mall. Or so he thought. The silence was shattered by a high-pitched beep from his computer. A new message blinked on the screen. Boris punched in his security codes, his heart starting to thump a bit faster. The message decrypted slowly, each pixel revealing a piece of a terrifying puzzle. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. 10 lives, 2 hours. Your parents' safety depends on your silence. The phone rang and rang unanswered. Dread coiled in Boris's stomach, a lead weight pulling him down. He tried again, the ringing echoing the frantic beat of his heart. Still no answer. His parents always kept their phone nearby, always. Boris reread the message, each chilling word searing itself into his brain. 10 lives, 2 hours, his parents' safety. His eyes darted from screen to screen, searching for something, anything out of place. And then he saw it, a flicker of movement in the food court. He zoomed in on the grainy image, his breath catching in his throat. 2 figures sat hunched over a table, their backs to the camera. They looked familiar, his parents. He fumbled for his phone again, his finger hovering over the call button. But the message flashed in his mind, your parents' safety depends on your silence. The mall was a universe unto itself, a sprawling complex of shops, restaurants and entertainment venues. Tonight, it was a stage for a nightmare, and he was the unwilling audience.
I can't believe this is happening.
He thought about the people still inside, the late-night workers stocking shelves, the couples sharing a romantic dinner. They were oblivious, blissfully unaware of the darkness that had descended upon them. He pictured their faces, their laughter, their mundane conversations. Did they deserve to be dragged into this madness? Did they deserve to become pawns in a twisted game orchestrated by a faceless tormentor? He couldn't let them become victims. He had to do something.
Fear threatened to paralyze me, but a steely resolve began to harden within me. I had a choice to make, be a coward and potentially sacrifice my parents, or confront the unknown and gamble with the lives of strangers. I took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling heavily on my shoulders. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I had to act. I decided to investigate. I had to find out if this was real, if my parents were truly in danger.
He grabbed his heavy maglite, its familiar weight a small comfort in the growing darkness. He had to be careful. He had to be invisible.
As I cautiously made my way towards the food court, a figure emerged from a darkened storefront. I froze, my hand instinctively tightening around my flashlight. The figure was tall and thin, almost skeletal, with a black hooded sweatshirt obscuring his face. He moved with an unsettling grace, gliding through the shadows like a phantom.
Boris watched as the figure stopped at a trash can, carelessly tossing something inside before disappearing down a side corridor. Boris's heart pounded in his chest. Was this the person behind the message? Was this the one holding his parents hostage?
I approached the trash can cautiously, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. I rummaged through the discarded food wrappers and empty soda cups until my fingers brushed against something stiff. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. My mind raced. I needed to find my parents, needed to know if they were safe, but the note was a clear warning. I was being watched. My every move was being tracked. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me, of whispers following my every step. The silence of the mall was no longer empty. It was filled with unseen observers, their presence suffocating.
He continued his search, his senses on high alert. He scanned the faces of the mannequins in the darkened shop windows, their frozen stares seeming to mock his fear.
Boris pushed forward, the urgency of the situation spurring him on. He found another note tucked into the handle of a janitor's closet. 9 lives, it read, the handwriting as unsettling as before. A digital clock taped to the note flashed ominously, 1:45:32. Time was slipping away. Panic welled up inside him, threatening to consume him. He had to think, had to come up with a plan. But his mind was a jumble of fear and confusion. He couldn't think straight. A muffled thud echoed down the corridor, snapping him back to the present. He followed the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. He rounded a corner and stopped dead in his tracks, his stomach churning at the sight before him. A body lay sprawled on the floor, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. The victim's eyes stared vacantly at the ceiling, their face frozen in a mask of terror. Blood pooled around the body, staining the pristine white tiles a sickening crimson. Boris stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. This was no accident. This was murder. The message flashed in his mind. 10 lives. The mall, once a symbol of commerce and entertainment, now felt like a hunting ground. The polished floors and gleaming storefronts couldn't hide the darkness that had seeped into its very foundation. Every shadow held a potential threat, every corner a possible hiding place for a killer. Boris knew he was in over his head. He was a security guard trained to observe and report, not to solve murders. But he was all that stood between the killer and his next victim. He had to become something he wasn't. He had to become a hunter. He found more notes, each one a taunting reminder of his helplessness. A mannequin strategically placed to look like a fallen shopper. A cleaning cart overturned, spilling its contents across the floor. The killer was toying with him, staging accidents to distract him, to slow him down. He raced against time, his mind working overtime, trying to decipher the killer's motive, to predict his next move. The pressure was immense, the weight of each passing second crushing him. Boris's pulse quickened. The killer knew who he was, knew about his parents. But how? He raced back to the control room, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to see his parents again, had to know they were real, that this whole thing wasn't some elaborate hallucination. He slammed into the chair in front of the monitors, his eyes scanning the screens. And then he saw it. A live video feed, different from the mall's security system. It was his parents. They were tied to chairs, their faces pale with fear, their eyes pleading for help. A digital clock was superimposed over the image. 1 hour. He had 1 hour to save his parents. 1 hour to save the remaining shoppers. 1 hour to outsmart a killer who seemed to be always one step ahead. He had to make a choice, his parents or the shoppers, his family or strangers. He took a deep breath, his eyes flickering between the monitors showing the mall and the live feed of his parents. He couldn't sacrifice innocent lives. He wouldn't. An idea. The game of cat and mouse ensued, a deadly dance through the darkened corridors of the mall. Boris, using his knowledge of the building, led the killer on a chase, his heart pounding with every turn, every shadow. Finally, he cornered him in the food court, the same place where he had seen his parents on the security footage. A struggle, a fight for survival. Boris managed to overpower the killer, the weight of the lives he had saved pushing him forward. The police arrived, sirens wailing, lights flashing, but as they apprehended the killer, a chilling realization washed over Boris. The live feed of his parents. It was a recording, a well-crafted fake designed to manipulate him, to break him. He turned to see a shadow waving at him from the end of a dim alleyway. I ask you, the viewer, what he should do. Please leave your comments and advise Boris on his next steps.